Hey there. Tonight, you're not walking through a castle or into a battlefield. You're stepping into the crowd, pressed shoulder to shoulder in a muddy square, breath mixing with the stench of beer, livestock, and something far stranger. Because you're about to witness a show, and not just any show. This is medieval entertainment. Raw, bizarre, unfiltered. The kind that didn't need a stage or curtains, just an audience and the promise of something insane. You think your modern screen time is wild. The Middle Ages laughed in the face of censors. Jesters stripped, monks juggled bones, and fools played dead for applause. Sometimes blood was part of the script. Sometimes it wasn't. And tonight, you're in the front row. If this kind of odd immersive history helps you relax or drift off, take a moment to subscribe, but only if it brings you peace. And down in the comments, let me know what time it is where you are and what part of the world you're listening from. It's oddly comforting to know who else is wandering back through time with us. So dim the lights, let the fire crackle if you've got one, and step into a world of drumbeats, gasps, and madness. You've just bought a ticket to the most outrageous shows the medieval world ever dared to stage. The juggler who juggled fire, knives, and the Lord's name. The crowd is already thick when you arrive. You're late. You had to sprint across the village square, dodging ox dung and vendors shouting about spoiled cider and salted eel. But you hear the gasps before you even see the flames. Someone's juggling. And not just balls or apples. Fire. Real fire. Orange and alive, it spits and spins above the heads of peasants and pilgrims alike. There's a low wall of bodies packed tight, but you squeeze through, heart pounding, cheeks flushed, until finally, there he is. He's shirtless, lean, eyes wild. A smirk curls his lip like he knows something the rest of you don't. A real juggler, a jongleur, the kind that wanders from fair to fair with nothing but a sack of steel and a dozen unholy tricks. His hands move too fast to follow. One moment he's tossing torches, the next, daggers, real ones. Blades glinting in the morning light, each one catching the sun like a whispered threat. And then he does it. The act that turns the mood. He juggles the crucifix. No, not an actual holy relic, he's not suicidal, but a hand-carved wooden one, painted gold, raised above his head like a challenge to the heavens. And the crowd, they freeze. You can hear someone whisper, "Blasphemy." Someone else laughs nervously. No one's sure whether to clap or cry out. But the jongleur only grins, tosses the crucifix high, lets it spin like a wheel, catches it behind his back. Then he speaks, loud enough to carry. "If the Lord disapproves," he says, "let him strike me now." A full second of silence. Then thunder, not from the sky, but from the collective gasp, the sound of mothers dragging children back, of an old friar muttering a prayer under his breath. But no lightning comes. The sky remains stubbornly blue, and that, somehow, makes it worse. Now he's tempting fate, and winning. He's walking a line between performance and heresy, and the crowd is eating it up. You stand frozen, unsure what to feel. Part of you wants to cheer. Part of you wants to run. Because this isn't just juggling. It's rebellion dressed as comedy. It's danger that smells like pine resin and old blood. It's everything you didn't expect from a festival morning. And just like that, it's over. He bows, absurdly low, and someone throws a coin. Then another, a few more. He catches one mid-air, bites it, winks at the crowd, and vanishes into the smoke. The space he leaves behind feels colder, like the wind picked up, like God might finally be paying attention. And you don't forget that act, not ever. The nun who sang naked under the moonlight, and why no one stopped her. You hear it before you see it, a voice, soft, slow, almost floating, At first, you think it's just wind through trees, or maybe a distant chant from a monastery, but then it rises, clearer, brighter. It sounds like a hymn. No, not quite. It's too breathy, too full. You follow the sound through a sloping field, over a crumbled stone fence and down into a clearing bathed in silver. Moonlight spills over everything, grass, stone, branches stripped bare by winter, and in the centre of it all, there she is, a woman, bare as the day she was born, standing barefoot in the dew, singing in Latin with the poise of a saint and the sway of a seductress. And the crowd? They're silent, wide-eyed. Some kneel, some stare. A few men cross themselves without knowing why. She's not just anyone, they call her the Singing Nun. Not because she belongs to any order anymore. She was cast out years ago, for heresy, for indecency, for claiming visions of Mary that involved oil, honey, and heat. But she didn't disappear. She performed, secretly, always, under the moon, in fields and forests, and sometimes in church ruins, long since abandoned by anyone but rats and ravens. And what you're seeing right now, it's not theatre, it's something older, something pagan. The way she lifts her arms, the way she lets the moonlight wash over her skin, the way her voice rises and falls like waves. This is ritual. But instead of blood, she offers song. Instead of incense, the scent of wild mint and sweat. No one dares interrupt her, not even the priest hiding in the shadows, mouth half open, fingers white-knuckling a wooden cross. He won't stop her. No one ever does. Because those who try, they say their crops fail, their horses go mad, their teeth fall out one by one until they can't even speak the warning. And so she sings. You don't know how long it lasts. It could be minutes, could be hours. Time melts here, under the moon, with that voice winding around your spine like smoke. When she finally stops, she simply turns, walks into the woods, disappears. No bow, no payment, no applause, just silence. And in that silence, you realize something. This wasn't meant to entertain. It was meant to remind you that power doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it dances naked in a field while the stars blink above. And you saw it, you felt it, and whether you admit it or not, you kind of hope she comes back. The fool who mocked a baron to his face and got paid for it. You're sitting on a rough-hewn bench, squinting past the heads and hats in front of you. The town square is lit with torches and red laughter. The ale's cheap and warm, the bread dry, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's here for one reason. The fool. He stumbles into view with bells on his shoes and a smirk that doesn't quite match the jingle. His tunic is half yellow, half red, clashing on purpose. His hair's a mop, his voice high-pitched and weirdly delicate. He moves like a puppet that cut its own strings. You can't tell if he's drunk or just pretending, maybe both. Then he points, right at the raised platform where the Baron sits. Now everything goes still, because this isn't just any Baron. This one is feared. The kind of man who taxes weddings, whips millers for sport, and rides a horse that looks better fed than most peasants. He's not smiling. He's not blinking. He's already regretting agreeing to this. And the fool? He starts talking. But he doesn't just tell jokes. He mimics the Baron's voice, imitates his horse's limp, describes in stunningly accurate detail the smell of his breath in the mornings. The crowd is choking on laughter, but it's the kind you try to swallow because your life might depend on it. You cover your mouth, you steal glances at the Baron. You expect a sword to be drawn at any second. But it doesn't happen. Instead, the fool keeps going. He talks about the Baron's new mistress, a woman so sharp-tongued the cook stopped seasoning his food in fear she'd critique that too. He describes their latest bedroom encounter using vegetables as metaphors. It's disgusting, hilarious, terrifying. And then something incredible happens. The Baron laughs just once. A single barked-out cough of amusement, but it's enough. Everyone exhales. The fool notices and freezes, cocking his head. "Was that a laugh, my lord?" he says. The Baron nods, slowly, then tosses a coin. The fool catches it mid-air and bows so deeply his bells scrape the dirt. And that's when it hits you. This fool is no idiot. He knew exactly what he was doing. He danced on a tightrope strung between life and death, using laughter as his only balance. And he didn't fall. He was paid. Mockery was his currency. Fear, his stage. And you. You just watched a man survive by being the only one who could say what everyone else was thinking. Out loud. With flair. The puppet show that ended in a riot. You think you're walking into something simple. A puppet show. A bit of comic relief for the market crowd. Maybe some slapstick. A prince gets bonked on the head. A pig talks like a bishop. Harmless stuff. But the energy's off. The crowd isn't just laughing. They're jeering, growling. One man's got a fist around a chicken leg like he's ready to throw it. A woman beside you mutters something under her breath, too low to catch. You see kids, but they're clutching their mother's skirts like they've wandered too close to fire. Then the curtain twitches. Out comes a puppet, a crooked little king with wobbly arms and a twisted paper crown. The puppeteer's voice is shrill and mocking. "I declare a new tax," the puppet king squeaks. "On shoes, on bread, on breathing." The laughter is bitter. Someone spits. Next, the puppet peasant appears. He's hunched, ragged, with a big red nose and a fake wart. "But my lord," he says, "we've nothing left but lice and prayer." The king puppet swings a club. Boom. Crowd erupts. The puppets begin a frantic manic dance, beatings, lies, fake coin rattling in wooden hands. It's exaggerated, sure. Funny, yes. But underneath, it's all too real. Because the king looks just like the actual lord of the region. The one who tripled rents last month. The one who took a baker's daughter for service and sent her back broken. The one who made them laugh through gritted teeth and empty bellies. And then the puppet peasant fights back. He grabs the king's club. He hits back. Once. Twice. He throws the crown into the crowd. And suddenly the line between story and reality snaps. Someone shouts, "Let's do the same!" A bottle shatters. A bench flips. The puppeteer drops the strings and bolts. You barely move fast enough to avoid the rush. Feet thunder past, bodies crash into stalls. It's chaos, electric and raw. The guards try to push through, but the crowd is no longer watching a show. They are the show now. You duck into an alley, heart pounding. You hear a rooster crow, a scream, laughter again, wild, unhinged. And you realize something. This wasn't entertainment. This was rebellion with puppets as prophets. That's what medieval shows did sometimes. They held up a mirror, cracked, smudged, a little absurd, but clear enough to spark something dangerous. And tonight, the spark lit a fire. The bear that danced, until it didn't you hear the chains before you see the bear. Heavy links dragged across cobblestones, the rhythm metallic and slow. The crowd forms a circle instinctively, giving space without speaking. Children climb barrels for a better view. Women clutch their cloaks, and you're pressed between shoulders, unsure if you should be excited or afraid. Then it appears. A bear. Real. Massive. Its coat is mangy in places, its eyes glassy but alert. There's a ring pierced through its nose, attached to the chain, held by a man who looks half wolf himself. No name, no introduction, just a whip in one hand and a drum slung across his chest. The drum starts, a low, pulsing beat. The bear rises slowly onto two legs. The crowd gasps. It begins to sway. Forward, back, left, right. Its movements are sluggish, unnatural, like someone forced a mountain to dance. But people cheer. They throw coins. One man howls in delight. You can't look away, because something's wrong. The bear isn't just tired, it's broken. You notice scars, burn marks, a deep groove around its neck where a collar has rubbed skin raw. Every sway of its body isn't a dance, it's pain, ritualized. And the handler, he laughs, calls the bear merry, tells it to bow. It does, barely. Then a child tosses a piece of meat too close. The bear drops. For a second, everything slows. You see the beast's eyes change. No longer dazed, alive, angry, it lunges. The crowd scatters. Screams rise like a wave crashing against stone. The handler falls, whip flying. The chain rattles madly, then snaps. And in the chaos, all that remains is the sound of claw on stone. Hooves clattering in panic, and the deep, terrifying roar that echoes down the alleyways like a curse. You duck behind a cart. The bear barrels past, wild and bleeding. It won't make it far. Someone will find it, end it. But for those few moments, it remembered something ancient, something rawer than chains, something no drum could tame. And you sit there, breathing hard, shaken to your bones. That wasn't a show. That was a cry for help, and no one heard it until it screamed. The jester who got away with murder. You never expect it from the jester. The man with the bells, the crooked grin, the voice that mimics monks and maidens alike. He's always there at court, bouncing between nobles, trailing jokes like breadcrumbs. You've seen him make a duke weep from laughter and a bishop nearly choke on wine. He's untouchable. He says what no one else dares, and everyone laughs, because that's what he's paid to do. But tonight is different. The jester's eyes linger too long. His smile doesn't quite reach the corners, and when he speaks, the humour cuts like a blade, sharp, precise, deliberate. You're standing near the back of the great hall, watching from the shadows. The firelight flickers across faces flushed with wine. Platters clink. Servants move like ghosts. And the jester begins a new tale. It's about a noble, greedy, cruel, fond of young kitchen boys and brutal punishments. He names no names, but everyone knows, because the man he's describing is real, and he's sitting right there, just feet from the jester, goblet frozen halfway to his lips. The laughter falters, the room shifts, but the jester presses on. He acts out a scene, mimics the noble's voice so perfectly, it's as if a mirror has been held up and cracked open for everyone to see. And then comes the twist. The kitchen boy poisons the noble, slips it into his wine, watches him twitch, then still. The jester takes a dramatic pause, then glances at the goblet in the noble's hand. Silence, and then the noble drops, choking, writhing, exactly as the jester described. People scream, wine spills, guards rush forward, but the jester, he just bows deeply. Told you it was a killer of a story, he whispers. You don't move, you don't breathe. You just watch him slip away through the side door unseen. Later, they'll call it coincidence, a freak accident, bad shellfish maybe. The jester will return days later, jokes ready, bells jingling, smile intact. But you'll know, you saw it, felt it, it wasn't a joke. It was justice, dressed in motley and wrapped in laughter, and in the twisted world of medieval entertainment where fools can speak truth and killers wear smiles, he got away with it. The sword swallower who challenged a knight and won. You're seated on a splintered bench in the town square, legs sore from walking all morning, breath fogging in the early dusk. A crowd has begun to gather, not for a hanging or a sermon, but something stranger. A man with a bare chest and a grim expression stands in the centre of the square. No stage, no music, just him, and a sword. Not a toy, a real sword. Iron, long as your arm. The edge looks freshly whetted. The townsfolk murmur, already leaning closer. You wonder if this is a trick. Then he lifts it high, the blade glinting with a hint of blood-red sunset. And slowly, too slowly, he begins to lower it into his mouth. Your throat tightens just watching. Inch by inch he slides the steel down, past the teeth, down the throat. His neck stretches, veins popping. His eyes lock on yours for a breathless second. Then the sword disappears completely. Gasps ripple through the crowd like a breeze. He bows, pulls it out, not a drop of blood on it. Then he speaks, his voice raspy, but loud enough for all to hear. I can swallow a blade longer than the sword of your so-called protectors. Everyone turns, and you see who he means. A knight, broad-shouldered, chainmail gleaming, flanked by 2 squires. He's been watching too, arms crossed, unimpressed. The townsfolk tense. You can feel it. The air gets tighter. You think you're brave, the knight growls. You jesters and showmen. No jester, the sword swallower says, just braver than any man who hides behind armor. A line is crossed. You know it. Everyone knows it. The knight draws his sword, not in show but in challenge, and to your shock, the sword swallower draws his own. A real one this time. Rusted but steady. What follows isn't a duel. It's a message. The sword swallower moves like water, ducking under the knight's wide swings, tapping his blade against the knight's shield like he's ringing a bell, mocking him, dodging, dancing, almost playful, until he steps in close and knocks the sword from the knight's hands. Silence. No blood. No killing blow. Just a final statement. He holds the knight's sword for a moment, then swallows it. Again. Then he turns and walks away. And just like that, the performer leaves the armoured man standing in the dirt, outplayed in front of the very people he was sworn to impress. You exhale, slowly, because what you just saw wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning with iron, courage, and a tongue of steel. The fire breather who set the church. Ablaze. It starts with a crowd. It always does. You're in the back again, peering between cloaks and caps as the fire breather sets up on the edge of the market square. He's stripped to the waist, skin blackened in patches, not with paint but with soot and old burns that never quite healed. In one hand, he holds a flask. In the other, a torch already glowing with orange fury. Children are pushed forward to see. Old men scoff, but they stay. You stay too, even though something about him feels volatile. He doesn't smile, doesn't call for applause. He just takes a long swig of the flask, tilts his head back, and breathes hell into the air. A plume of fire erupts, searing the sky in a roaring blossom. The crowd gasps. The warmth hits your face even from where you're standing. He does it again, and again. Each burst hotter, higher, wilder. People cheer now, caught in the euphoria of danger. You hear someone shout, "Do it toward the heavens." That's when he turns, slowly, toward the church. The chapel of St. Elric stands nearby, hunched and half-timbered, its wooden steeple a finger pointed toward God. The priest is already hurrying outside, robes flapping, voice raised in protest. But the fire breather doesn't stop. He drinks, raises the torch, and lets out the biggest jet of flame yet, right in the direction of the church. The roof catches like dry paper. Screams erupt, bells begin to ring, not the joyous kind. You're shoved sideways as people scatter. The priest drops to his knees. And the fire breather? He just watches, calm, almost reverent. Later, you'll hear the stories. That the man had been excommunicated, that his sister was accused of witchcraft and burned by that same church's command, that this wasn't a performance, it was revenge. But in the moment, as flames clawed skyward and smoke turned the air thick and grey, All you saw was a man with a flame in his chest and nothing left to lose. And as the church burned, no one dared stop him, because even in the Middle Ages, fire speaks a language everyone understands. The puppet show that made nobles cry. You thought it would be a show for children. That's what puppet plays are, right? Painted dolls on strings, a bit of slapstick, maybe a dragon, maybe a joke about flatulence. You followed the small procession of villagers just after supper toward the clearing beyond the abbey walls, not expecting much. But as you take your place in the ring of standing onlookers, something feels different. There's no laughter yet, no children tugging at sleeves, just quiet, a heavy sort of quiet, like something important is about to be said but hasn't found its voice yet. The puppet master is cloaked, not in colour but in brown wool, frayed and patched. His hands are calloused, his eyes sharp. He doesn't speak. He just pulls the curtain aside and begins. The stage is small, a simple platform of wood and canvas, but what happens on it pulls you in immediately. The puppets are crude but expressive. One's dressed as a nobleman, big hat, golden thread. Another wears a beggar's rags. You think you know where this is going, a morality tale, a farce. But then, the story begins to shift. The noble puppet takes land, not with force, but with ink. The beggar becomes a tenant, then a debtor, then a ghost. The scene darkens. A child puppet appears, sick, starving, crying for bread. And then something you just didn't expect happens. The noble puppet begins to weep. Not real tears, of course, just clever work with thread and movement. But it's convincing, painfully so. You glance around. The crowd is silent. Some are staring with mouths open. Others, grown men, elderly women, are wiping at their cheeks. You see one knight shift uncomfortably, as though the puppets have reached into his armour and plucked a nerve he thought long dead. It's not a story about lords and peasants anymore. It's about power and guilt and hunger that doesn't leave when the show ends. When the final scene plays, the noble lies on the ground, forgotten, surrounded by coins and silence. The child puppet walks away into black cloth, and the curtain falls with no applause. The puppet master bows, once, then vanishes behind the stage. No tips, no hat passed. Just a truth laid bare in wood and wool and motion. You leave quietly, unsure if you've seen a play or a confession performed by strings. The dancing bear riot that closed the fair, the first thing you hear is the drum, a heavy, hollow thump beating in time with your own steps as you move through the crowd. It's fair day in the village of Red Hollow, an event that comes once a season and devours the town with colour, noise and smells both sweet and putrid. You've seen jugglers, eaten honey cakes, watched a man eat fire. But what draws you now is the sound ahead. Pipes clapping, shouts and the growl of something big. You squeeze past bodies toward the circle forming at the fair's heart. Children are perched on barrels. Adults lean forward, and there, at the centre, stands the bear. It's enormous. A great brown beast, scars along its snout, a metal ring through its nose, and a rope wrapped twice around its neck. Its eyes dart nervously as the handler prods it with a stick. The crowd cheers as the music begins. Pipes and drums, fast and mocking. The bear rises on its hind legs and begins to sway, then stomp, then turn awkward pirouettes in time with the beat. It's a strange sight. Funny at first, but not for long. You notice the sweat glistening on its fur, the way its tongue lolls in exhaustion, the way the rope is pulled tighter every time it slows. The children clap louder. Someone throws a coin, then the handler jabs too hard. A yelp, a snarl, the rope snaps. Chaos. You don't run. Your feet won't let you. You stand frozen as the bear lashes out, not with blind fury but with terrifying precision. The handler is the first to fall, arm broken like a snap twig. Then a merchant, a bystander. People scream, stools overturn, the bear charges, scattering the crowd. You dive behind a barrel as it barrels past, close enough to smell its breath. Hot, foul, panicked. Guards arrive minutes too late. Spears flash, arrows fly. In the end, it takes 6 men to bring the creature down, but by then, the fair is already over. 3 dead, dozens injured, the square littered with spilled cider, upturned carts, and the limp body of a beast that never wanted to dance. They say the fair won't return next season, or ever, and you don't blame them, because now, when you hear a drumbeat or a flute, your heart races, not with joy, but with the memory of that swaying, sweating creature and the moment it chose not to perform, but to fight. The tavern duel that turned into a 5-day show. It starts like most fights do in a medieval tavern, with a spilled drink and a misplaced word. You're sitting on a bench slick with spilled mead, nursing your second bowl of something pretending to be stew, when you hear the commotion. 2 men, both armoured, both drunk, shouting in slurred Latin and low Saxon, gesturing with tankards and fists. The tavern hushes the way a forest does before a storm. One is a knight. His tabard says he's fought in the king's name. The other, a mercenary by the look of him. No noble sigils, just bloodstains and a jaw that looks like it's forgotten how to smile. They've been trading jabs for hours ever since one insulted the other's horse, or wife, or maybe both. A blade flashes. The tavern owner doesn't flinch, no one does. Because in this place, a fight isn't a crisis. It's theatre. And when the duel begins, it's like a curtain rising. They lunge across benches, tables crash, a lute gets smashed. You duck a flying mug and grin like the rest of them. This isn't just violence, it's a performance. The kind that breaks ribs and earns free drinks for weeks. But what makes this one different is that it doesn't end. Not that night, not the next. They rest, eat, drink, and then pick up where they left off. Each morning the tavern packs fuller. Locals first, then travellers, then nobles in silks who've heard rumours of the duel of the century. Bets are placed. A bard starts singing verses between rounds. By day 3, someone sets up bleachers. Someone else starts selling meat pies. And the duel becomes a festival. They trade real blows, but never fatal ones, cuts, bruises, cracked ribs. But neither yields, neither wants to. They're no longer just fighters, they're the main attraction. By day 5, their names are chanted like saints. Then finally, a draw. They shake hands, or what's left of them, and collapse into laughter. The crowd erupts. You cheer too, though your throats roar and your purse lighter than it should be. The tavern owner raises a toast, and you realise, maybe for the first time, that here, in this age of mud and smoke, the line between blood sport and entertainment is as thin as the foam on your cup. You didn't just witness a duel, you witnessed the birth of legend. The juggler who defied the executioner. The square is packed tighter than sheep in winter. You can barely breathe, shoulder to shoulder with villagers and merchants and bored guards. The scent of boiled onions and old sweat hangs thick in the spring air. You're not even sure why you came. They said it would be a hanging, but what you're watching doesn't look like any execution you've seen. On the raised platform stands a man in motley, a juggler. He's slim, wild-eyed, with a beard that looks like it's been stolen from a fox. Chains hang from his ankles, his wrists are bound with rough rope, and yet, somehow, he's juggling. 3 apples, red, fresh, stolen from a noble's orchard, they say. That's what he was caught for. Theft, insolence, mockery of the church. The crowd's here to see him pay, but he doesn't act like a man about to die. He spins, hops on one foot, tosses the apples behind his back, and catches them again with a wink. The executioner, huge, hooded, humourless, waits beside the gallows, arms crossed, impatient. But the juggler holds court. He tells jokes between passes. Jokes about monks with secret sins, about lords with soft bellies and softer heads, about death itself, wearing a cowl too big and shoes too small, and people laugh, loudly, even the guards, even you. For a moment, he isn't a man condemned. He's a king. Then the rope is brought forward. The juggler stops. The apples fall. One rolls across the platform and drops into the dust. He looks at the crowd, at you, and smiles. "I stole from the wrong tree," he says, "but I fed a hungry boy. That should count for something." Then he bows, a long, sweeping bow that feels like the end of an act. The executioner steps in, but someone yells. Then another, then more. You can't make out the words at first, but they grow louder. A chant. Free him. Spare the jester. Let him finish his tale. The Lord presiding scowls. His fingers twitch. But he sees what you see. This is no longer an execution. It's a performance. And the crowd refuses to let the curtain fall. With a gesture, the Lord relents. The juggler drops to his knees, half from relief, half from shock. He won't hang today. He'll perform again tomorrow. And as the platform is cleared, you wonder how many lives in this world can be saved not with sword or silver, but with the simple defiance of laughter. The fool who told the king the truth. You're standing in a great hall lit by trembling candlelight. The stone walls are cold, but the air is warmer than you expected, thick with smoke and wine and the sour sweat of 100 noble bodies wrapped in velvet and ambition. At the far end of the room, the king sits slouched on a wide throne carved from oaken lions. His face is young but tired, crown crooked, fingers tapping the armrest. He's surrounded by flatterers, knights, courtiers, priests, all nodding, bowing, pouring honey into his ears. And then the fool enters. You hear him before you see him. A high whistle, the jangle of bells, a whistle again. He somersaults through the doorway, lands in a kneel, and tips an invisible hat to the king. His clothes are red and gold and mismatched. His face painted white, with a black line drawn from each eye down to his jaw. He looks ridiculous, but he's the only one not pretending. You're close enough to see the tension in the room shift. Nobles whisper. One of them, an advisor in purple robes, sneers. "Your Majesty," he says, "must we endure another of his commentaries?" The king shrugs. "I'm bored," he mutters. "Let him speak." The fool grins. He steps forward, arms wide, bowing to the nobles like a performer about to reveal a trick. Then he turns to the king. "Your Majesty," he begins, "you are surrounded by truth-tellers, which is why you're blind." The room freezes. The fool paces slowly, dragging his toe along the flagstones. Every man in this hall sees your faults, your fears, your flailing plans. And every man here tells you you're glorious, because they love their heads more than they love the truth. Gasps. One noble drops his goblet. The king leans forward, eyes locked on the fool. "You wish to be wise?" the fool asks. "Then surround yourself with jesters. We are too low to lie." He juggles 3 apples he pulled from nowhere, catches one and bites it mid-spin. The king laughs. It's short, it's sharp, but it's real. "Leave," he says to the courtiers, "all of you, except the fool." They bristle but obey, and just like that, the jester becomes the most powerful man in the room, because while others bowed, he dared to speak. Later, the story will be told across the land that a painted man in motley once saved a kingdom from ruin, not with sword or strategy, but with a joke sharpened into truth. And you, lucky enough to witness it, will never forget the night a fool wore wisdom like a crown, the bawd who became a star. You don't know where you are exactly, somewhere on the edge of the city, where the cobblestones give way to dirt and the lamps burn a little dimmer. A crooked sign hangs above the door. Swinging in the wind, it reads, "The Lucky Rat," painted in faded red. It doesn't look like much. A low tavern with warped shutters and a door that's been kicked in more than once. But tonight, every table is taken. Every bench, every wall, every open inch is stuffed with someone. Drunks and soldiers, tanners and pickpockets, women with sharp eyes and sharper tongues. Everyone is waiting for her. You hear the bells first, a soft jingle that cuts through the noise like silk through chainmail. And then she appears. Not tall, not young, not what you'd expect. But as soon as she steps into the candlelight, the room bends toward her like wheat to a breeze. She wears a patchwork dress that clings in all the right places and smiles like she knows every sin you've ever thought about committing. Maybe she does. She's called the Board. Not her real name, not even close, but that's what they whisper in the alleys. She used to serve drinks, clean floors, do what she had to, until one night, drunk on mead and fury, she grabbed a lute, stood on a table and sang. Not about love, not about lords, about sweat and sore feet and bad sex and lies and rot, about real things, and people loved her for it. Now she doesn't clean floors. She owns the tavern. She doesn't serve drinks. They're poured in her name. And tonight, she sings again. You find yourself holding your breath. Her voice is smoky, not smooth, the kind of voice that sounds like it's been broken and stitched back together by fire. Every line lands like a confession. Every verse dares you to look away. You don't. She sings of husbands who snore, priests who peek, knights who never come home but always leave something behind. The crowd laughs, groans, claps, hoots, and when she finishes, no one moves, not even you, because you've just seen something more powerful than a sword or a crown, a woman who turned her pain into poetry, her wounds into weapons. She bows, not deeply, not for you, but for herself. And as she disappears behind the curtain, the room begins to breathe again. But you know what you saw. You were there. You saw the Board. And she sang the truth. The monk who danced with the devil. The abbey is silent when you arrive, save for the slow drip of melting wax and the far-off rasp of winter wind against stone. It smells of ink and incense and the sweat of men trying to be more than men. Monks glide past you like shadows, eyes downcast, lips silently counting prayers. You're told to wait, politely but firmly. So you sit on a wooden bench, cold as a tomb, and stare at a mural above the altar. Saints with halos, demons with claws, the usual warnings. And then he walks in. Brother Renaud, a thin man with eyes like a storm that hasn't decided whether to rage or weep. He wears the same robe as the others, but something about him, his posture, his stillness, makes the hairs on your neck rise. He's the one they talk about in whispers, the monk who danced with the devil. No one knows exactly what happened that night. Some say he summoned the devil on purpose. Others say the devil came uninvited. But all agree on this. Renaud survived. Changed, but alive. He doesn't speak at first. He simply opens a heavy book bound in dark leather. The pages are ancient, the ink faded, but the drawings, twisted, alive, seem to pulse with something deeper than art. I wrote this, he says at last, his voice low, with my own blood. You blink, he's not joking. He tells you the story, not as a boast, not even as a warning, but like someone opening a wound and asking you to stare. He speaks of a hunger, not for food or flesh, but for understanding. He says he danced with the devil not under a blood moon, but under doubt. He describes a hall of mirrors with no reflections, a question whispered in his ear by a voice that didn't echo. And the dance, he says it wasn't steps, it was surrender. It was offering everything he believed in to a creature that believed in nothing. You ask why he came back. He looks at you for a long moment. Then he smiles, sad, tired, knowing, because even hell, he says, gets boring after a while. Then he closes the book, walks away, doesn't look back. You leave the abbey different than when you entered, not cursed, not enlightened, but aware that even behind monastery walls, even among holy men, the devil sometimes leads, and sometimes the truly faithful follow, not out of evil, but because they need to know who they are when the fire gets close. The beggar who fooled the queen. You're standing near the back of a bustling square, half hidden in the smoke of roasted chestnuts and the scent of damp wool. The cold nips at your fingers, and the chatter of the crowd is restless. All eyes are fixed on the grand platform at the square's centre, where gold-laced banners flap in the wind and armoured guards keep their hands near their hilts. The Queen is visiting, a rare thing. Her carriage rolls in like thunder wrapped in velvet, and you catch a glimpse of her. High cheekbones and narrow gaze, the kind of face that's seen too much flattery and too little truth. And then you see him, just another beggar. Dirty feet, tangled hair, a tunic stained with things better left unnamed. He limps through the crowd, muttering blessings and curses like prayers. People part for him, not out of kindness, but to avoid the stink. He moves closer to the platform, unnoticed by the guards who are watching for swords, not stories. He reaches the steps. A pause. A silence. Then he speaks. Not in the slurred, stuttering rasp of a man gone mad, but with the poise of a court poet. He tells a tale about a queen who once disguised herself as a servant and learned the truth of her people, how she returned wiser, more loved, more feared. His voice carries, clear and sharp, cutting through the frost and the murmurs like a knife through silk. The crowd listens, so does the queen, and then the twist. He finishes with a bow so theatrical you almost laugh, until you realize the story wasn't just a tale. It was a test, a mirror held up to the monarch herself. And she knows it. She doesn't stop her guards, doesn't punish him. Instead, she gestures. The servant hands the beggar a pouch. Heavy. Gold, probably. Then she leans forward, says something no one hears. He nods, walks away. You never see him again. Some say he was a court jester, punished and cast out. Others say he was once a nobleman who lost everything and found a new kind of power in anonymity. A few whisper that he was the Queen's own brother, presumed dead in a war no one wants to remember. But you just know what you saw. A beggar who spoke truth to a queen and left with a reward most courtiers would kill for. Because in the right moment, with the right words, even the lowest soul can rise higher than the crown. The bear who played the flute. You're in a clearing just beyond the market town, where the mud is softer and the air carries the smell of roasted nuts and warm straw. The sun is low, casting long golden streaks through the forest canopy. A crowd gathers in a circle, quiet but buzzing with anticipation. Children lean forward, dogs sit still. Even the drunk in the corner wipes his eyes with a sleeve, suddenly sober. Then you hear it. Not a roar, not a growl. A flute, high and strange, melancholic and beautiful, like wind whispering secrets through a hollow tree. And from the trees comes a bear, massive, shaggy, scarred, its coat matted with bits of leaf and old battles, but it walks upright, steps slow, almost regal, on its hind legs. A rope hangs loose around its neck, not tight, not cruel, just a symbol, a collar of performance. Behind it walks a man, the handler, old, gaunt with a grey beard that looks combed by birds and breath that steams in the dusk. He plays the flute without looking at his audience. The notes dance and the bear sways, then moves, and the bear dances. Not like a human, not like a beast. Something in between. It lifts one paw, twirls, drops to all fours, rises again. The music and movement feel ancient, like something performed long before kings and crowns. You don't breathe, not because of fear, but because it feels sacred. The handler stops, the flute falls silent, the bear freezes, then slowly, with impossible delicacy, it lowers itself to the ground and curls up. Not like a beast exhausted, but like a performer taking a final bow. The crowd erupts, coins fly. The handler doesn't speak, doesn't bow. He only raises a hat and lets the coins fall in. Then he whispers something to the bear, and the bear nods. It nods. They leave together, disappearing into the woods like fog in morning light. You hear someone say it was all a trick. The bear was trained, beaten, broken. Another claims the handler was a druid or a sorcerer, or the bear itself transformed. A curse, a pact, a punishment. Who knows? But none of that matters, because what you saw wasn't a trick. It was art, wild and strange and unforgettable. And for the rest of your life, when someone plays a flute, you'll half expect a bear to appear, not to attack, but to dance. The executioner who collected applause. The scaffold creaks beneath your boots, not because you're the one about to die, but because you're close enough to see everything, feel everything. You didn't come to witness a death, not really. You came because everyone else did, because executions in this town aren't punishments, they're performances. The crowd parts as he arrives. The executioner. They say he never speaks, that he's taken a vow of silence, or that his tongue was cut out by a duke whose brother he once beheaded. No one knows. What everyone does know is this: he has style. His hood is black, yes, but it's trimmed in red. Not blood, velvet. His boots are polished. His axe, impossibly clean, always gleaming in the light. He moves like a stage actor, every motion smooth and deliberate. A flick of the wrist, a turn of the heel. When he climbs the scaffold, it's like watching a dancer ascend the stage. The condemned man is shaking. A thief, or a rebel, or maybe just someone who crossed the wrong noble. You try not to look too closely. It's easier that way. The executioner looks at him, then looks at the crowd. A pause, a hush. And then he bows, a sweeping theatrical gesture. And the crowd cheers. You feel your spine go cold. This isn't about justice, this is about spectacle. He turns to the prisoner, places a hand on the man's shoulder, almost gently, whispers something, no one can hear what, and then slowly raises the axe. One swing, clean. The crowd erupts again. Flowers are thrown, a few coins too. The executioner doesn't flinch. He descends, axe slung over his shoulder like a minstrel's lute, vanishing back into the crowd. Gone before the body has even stopped twitching. You don't clap, not this time, but part of you wants to. Not because it was right, because it was beautiful. In a world of mud and rot, where most men die screaming in ditches or shivering in barns, this man turned death into art. He made terror feel elegant, and for a moment you wonder, if your day comes, would you want it done by him, the fool who outsmarted the bishop? The bishop's procession winds through the square like a silk serpent, gold-threaded banners, heavy incense, voices droning in Latin. You stand just off the side, crushed against a barrel of half-rotten apples, trying to glimpse the man whose ring even nobles stoop to kiss. And then you hear the laughter, high, cracked, impossible to ignore. It cuts through the reverent hush like a knife through butter. The crowd stiffens, the guards grip their weapons, the bishop pauses, and in steps the fool, barefoot, ragged, with bells tied to his knees and a tunic 2 sizes too small. He walks like his joints don't agree with each other, arms flailing, head bobbing. But his eyes, they're clear, sharp, watching. He tumbles to his knees in front of the bishop, wails like a widow, then grabs the man's ornate crozier and uses it to scratch his back. The crowd gasps. The bishop turns the colour of raw meat. A gesture from him, and this jester would vanish beneath the stone floor of some forgotten dungeon. But the fool speaks. "Forgive me, holy sir," he croons. "I mistook you for God. You both wear gold and expect me to kneel, but only one of you makes it rain." Silence, then a stifled snort. From someone important, a noble, maybe two. Laughter spreads like spilled wine. The bishop hesitates, tongue pressing against the inside of his cheek. The fool seizes the moment. He produces a scroll, unrolls it with dramatic flair, and begins reading a confession of sins. Not his, the bishop's. Gluttony. He quotes a feast held during famine. Greed, a new wing to the bishop's manor paid for by taxing widows. Pride, a mural of himself painted behind the altar. The bishop steps forward, and the fool kneels, holds up a mirror. "Your Grace," he says, "before you cast out devils, be sure they aren't staring back." No one speaks, no one dares. But the bishop does something no one expects. He laughs, then turns and leaves. The procession moves on, faster now, and the fool? He stays behind, bows low, and is showered with bread, wine, and copper coins. You'll never forget what you saw, because in a world ruled by titles and iron and fear, the only man who could speak truth wore a jester's hat. The song that made a baron cry. It happens in the great hall. You're there by accident, one of the many faces half lit by torchlight, pressed into the stone corners between a drunk reeve and a maid sneaking bites of cold chicken. The fire roars and the baron sits atop his carved oak throne, a goblet in hand, beer dripping wine, eyes already dulled from excess. Enter the minstrel. A woman, slim, plain, wrapped in a simple cloak, no jewels, no fanfare, just a lute strapped to her back and a voice barely louder than the crackle of the hearth. No one pays attention at first, but then she sings. Not about kings or battles, not about saints or God. She sings of a shepherd, a boy who loved a girl who married someone else. She sings of a dog who waited outside a monastery for 13 winters after its master never returned. She sings of a field that never yielded grain again after a war trampled it. Simple things. But her voice, it doesn't beg for applause. It doesn't soar. It hums like something old and half-remembered, like the tune your mother once sang as she stitched your shirt, long before your first tooth fell out. The room stills. The baron leans forward. His goblet lowers. His hand twitches. She sings one more verse about a soldier returning home too late, to a house empty and overgrown with ivy. And the baron, he cries, one tear, then two. A man who has watched men burn and ordered hangings before breakfast now bites his lip like a child lost in a crowd. When she finishes, there's no clapping, only silence, as if to speak would break the spell. The baron stands, walks to her, says nothing, presses a gold ring into her palm, and walks out. You'll remember that moment, not because of the song, but because of what it revealed, that even the cruelest men carry something soft and broken inside, and sometimes only music knows where it hides. And now we've reached the end of our walk through the crooked alleys of medieval entertainment, the whispers, the roars, the silences that followed. Strange performances, forgotten faces, truths wrapped in jest and danger. Not all of it was fair, most of it wasn't, but all of it was real once. Somewhere beneath the dirt and the ash, the laughter still lingers. If this story helped you drift a little further from the noise of today, if it let your mind wander somewhere quieter and slower, then I'm glad you found your way here. If you haven't already, you can subscribe for more of these midnight journeys through the odd corners of history, but only if it truly brings you peace. And if you're still listening, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is right now. It's a strange comfort, seeing all the little glowing screens around the world blinking quietly together. A shared silence across oceans. May your night be soft, your thoughts kind, and your dreams just a little weirder than usual. Sleep well, and good night.